New and innovative solar power projects are on the horizon. Government is working in tandem with various stakeholders to fulfill commitments made under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and other treaties. Head of the Multilateral and Environmental Unit at the Ministry of Planning and Development, Kishan Kumar Singh, shares insight into one agreement, which plays a major role in strengthening the response by countries to the threat of climate change by aiming to reduce global temperatures.
In 2013 and 2014, I was the co-chair of the negotiations of the Paris Agreement and was able to, at the end of my tenure in 2014, table what could be considered the zero draft of the Paris Agreement. Further to that, in 2016, the Multilateral Environmental Agreements Unit and the Ministry of Planning made recommendations to the government to ratify and sign the Paris Agreement, which they did. The Paris Agreement now provides that every country in the world, regardless of the size and regardless of the size of their emissions, are to now propose actions that they are willing to undertake to reduce emissions of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere.
The head of the Multilateral Environmental Unit explains the legal framework necessary to ensure success.
In order now to translate the international legal obligations under the Paris Agreement into nationally appropriate actions, the requisite domestic framework, regulatory and policy framework is required so that compliance can be enhanced and ensured. And therefore, we are now looking at ways in which the policy framework is going to be enhanced, primarily through the revision or the updating of the National Climate Change Policy to incorporate the provisions of the Paris Agreement, but also making recommendations for amendments to existing legislation to ensure that we report on the emissions.
The Paris Agreement requires all countries to put forward their best efforts through nationally determined contributions or NDCs, and to strengthen these efforts in the years ahead. NDCs provides information on how each country intends to reduce their national emissions and adapt to the impact of climate change. All member countries report regularly on their emissions and implementation efforts.
Trinidad and Tobago was the first Caribbean country to submit its nationally determined contribution in 2015, which proposes to reduce cumulative emissions in three sectors: the power generation, the transportation and industrial sectors by 15% relative to a business as usual baseline by 2030.
Head of the Multilateral Environmental Unit at the Ministry of Planning, Kishan Kumar Singh, speaking about this country's plans to reduce its carbon footprint. Government, through the Vision 2030 National Development Strategy, remains committed to addressing environmental concerns and is placing special emphasis on renewable energy. You've been listening to the series Environmental Matters, a cleaner energy source.
This was a joint production of the Ministry of Planning and Development and the Information Division, Office of the Prime Minister, Communications.